I haven't in many respects. Like, is it done? Like, have we destroyed? Has the presidency been destroyed now? Where the American public is not really legitimately going to have a problem with a president who seems to work 10 to 15% of the time?
You know, they just don't believe it. His voters just, they believe what they want to believe. I mean, this story that came out, I don't know, the last week and a half or so about, we knew that Trump had this category of time called executive time, which was something that John Kelly, the former chief of staff, apparently put into place as a way to sort of let Trump not feel too restricted by his schedule, because he was chafing at having to do meetings and briefings and all that. So he needs all this free time. Right. We call that work. They call it, that he needs this time to, and we know what he's doing, right? He's shooting the breeze with his pals on the phone. He's watching TV. He's tweeting. He's hanging out with staff members and kvetching about his coverage. And, it's obvious what he does with his time. He's not making policy or, listening to anybody, any experts or anything like that. He wants to talk about himself and talk about his coverage and talk about his political situation. I imagine he spends a fair amount of time with lawyers too, because he's, right, under investigation in every aspect of his life. So, this idea that he needs all this time has been out there for a while, but then Axios got a hold of these schedules. Somebody leaked these schedules that show that it's like 60% of his time he spends doing this and not doing what normal presidents do. And we've seen a lot of people over the past week or so come out and talk about how other presidents' time was structured. I mean, the president's time is extremely valuable, right? I mean, in the normal presidency. So that it's important that they make the most of it, right? And no other president has done what he does. I mean, he barely comes to work, really. He comes late, like 11 o'clock in the morning, 10, 11. He, has one meeting or one briefing, which we also learned, is basically they do color-coded, presentations where they know to use his name a lot so that he'll pay attention and keep it as brief as possible. And then he goes to lunch, and then he takes some executive time. Then he has maybe a meeting with the vice president or something. I mean, it's amazing. So, this guy is not, he does not, and we know all about the golfing too. I mean, he does more golfing than anybody else in presidential history. We know the guy he doesn't have a good work ethic. And that's because he inherited his business. He's basically, been sort of dancing on the edge, doing, these deals over the years where his dad was going to bail him out if they were bad. So I don't know that he ever really has done a lot of, focused work the way that most of us think a president should be doing.
Right.
And, his people don't care. They don't believe it. They think it's not true. How could he be so rich if he wasn't really a hard worker? That's, they've been, brainwashed into thinking that's actually follows for anybody, much less a guy who inherited all his money. So, this is just, I don't know how you get that through to people. I really don't. I don't know. The fake news thing is really sunk in with Trump's followers.
But isn't it the real problem is not that his, look, we saw this during the Bush years too, right? Like there's 35% of the population that are dead enders. They're never going to be swayed, right? They're always going to be supportive of these authoritarian, conservative right-wing authoritarians. The real problem, it strikes me when we hear stuff like this, is that there's no way this is not actionable, right? So the rest of us who are sort of like, who have either, I guess we've bought into the myth of, you need to work hard as president. Being president's a hard job, right? And on some level, we've bought into that myth because it's clearly, you can get by not doing any work as president. And so it's not actionable for people like us who have a problem with it. I mean, ultimately, we're going to vote against this guy, but we're going through a period of time for 2 years where the guy's not doing any work. And, it's hard to see that there are any implications to it other than maybe he's not doing as much bad stuff as he would if he was actually focused. I mean, that's the part that sort of I find is the most disturbing about all of this these days, is that there is no mechanism, and partly maybe I'm just going through, post midterm election blues, and don't have a sense of like, okay, well, what do we do in the short term to say, hey, you're president, you probably should work more than 2.5 hours a day. Like, there, you know what I mean? Like, it's on some level, we have no choice but to accept it. And that is, and to, on some level, to normalize it. So much of what has happened has become normalized, despite the fact that we spent so much energy saying we can't normalize this, we can't normalize this. Human beings, after a while, things get to be normal.
Right. Oh, I totally agree with you. And that's something that is really, it's been on my mind too. I've been thinking a lot about this, that, when Trump was first elected, there was this, this massive outcry, this isn't normal. We can't let the press normalize him. This is something we have to fight. I wrote a lot about that and how important it was not to, let this become something that we just sort of accept. But over time, I realized, and just as you say, you have to accept it because it's happening. To not accept it would be to deny the reality of what we're watching, right? Of what we're experiencing. And so, this is a very difficult thing. And I wonder about this a lot. What do we do if and when Trump is defeated in 2020? Much of what we had previously assumed to be true about the presidency, about our government, about the way our politics work, that's really been shattered, and I don't know how easy it's going to be to I shouldn't say this. We're not going to restore it. That's done. The past is over. We've proven that what we thought was possible or impossible was wrong.
Right.
So we're going to have to reinvent here going forward, and there's going to be a big process, and maybe that can be a positive thing. There are a lot of things about the past that weren't that great, so maybe there's a chance to maybe reinvent in a positive way. But it's a very strange situation that we're in, and
very
strange. watching, I was so struck watching the State of the Union again when I see him get in the car and come over there and go. I still can't believe. Oh my God, Donald Trump is the president. All
right. Well, listen, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk a little bit more about the State of the Union, because we haven't even touched on the fact that the president offered, I guess, would you call this a rhyme or a limerick, to argue that he shouldn't be investigated. And you could also call it maybe a threat. But we got to take a quick break. I'm Sam Seder. There's a Ring of Fire Radio. Be right back with Digby.